Barron Trump stayed silent for years until Jasmine Crocket dropped his name on live TV, forcing him to face a truth even his own family never warned him about. They were only 12 minutes into the segment when it happened. The studio lights were sharp, the energy tense but routine, just another Sunday morning political roundtable on Capitol View. Representative Jasmine Crocket, dressed in a deep navy suit, sat poised between two pundits. Across from her was Victor Levinson, an ex-lobbyist turned commentator known for interrupting mid-sentence. They were discussing ethics, campaign finance irregularities, conflicts of interest, hush money allegations, nothing new until Jasmine leaned forward, locked eyes with the host, and said, "I just find it wild that nobody wants to talk about what happened with the trust realignment in January 2021, particularly the one involving Barron Trump's name. That wasn't an oversight, that was intentional." The table fell silent. Deirdre Collins, the seasoned host, blinked and cleared her throat. Victor smirked, assuming Jasmine had slipped, but she didn't flinch. Deirdre tried to pivot. "Congresswoman, are you alleging Barron Trump was involved in a financial transfer at the end of the Trump presidency? I'm saying there's a paper trail with his name on it, and we ought to stop pretending it doesn't exist." The control room cut to commercial faster than anyone could react, but it was too late. Within minutes, clips were online, the full quote, reactions, stammers, smirks. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok exploded. Hashtags trended before the segment returned. A junior producer whispered, "This one's gonna blow." And it did. There hadn't been a live TV moment that unpredictable since Katie Couric caught a senator lying about Afghanistan troop numbers in 2011. But even then, it hadn't touched a former president's child, especially one who had barely spoken publicly. Phones rang nonstop. Journalists texted in all caps. On a cable news panel in Austin, a political analyst removed her earpiece mid-show, asking if anyone could confirm the claim. No one could, but the damage was done. Back on set, Jasmine doubled down. "I'm not attacking a child," she said. "I'm pointing out how power protects itself. If Barron Trump's name was used in that realignment, let's talk about it. Let's stop pretending some people are too sacred to question." Victor shook his head. "You're politicizing a kid." "I'm politicizing documents," she snapped. "If a name is used in a trust structure to protect wealth from scrutiny, that's a red flag." The host ended the discussion early. No one clapped or laughed. It wasn't that kind of moment. Backstage, a junior intern whispered, "Barron's name is trending everywhere." But no one yet knew how close that name drop came to the one person who wanted nothing to do with any of this. The clip lasted under 40 seconds, but the damage was instant, all coming down to 12 carefully chosen words. Let's stop pretending some people are too sacred to question. To understand how those words shook so many, especially the Trump family, we rewind a bit. A week before the show, Jasmine had been forwarded a confidential file from a House Oversight Committee staffer. No names, no explanations, just a scanned document dated January 12, 2021. It included paperwork from a blind trust adjustment in the final 8 days of Trump's presidency. In the beneficiary section was something unexpected. One custodial structure listed the name Barron William Trump. Jasmine, a former civil rights attorney, had seen hundreds of financial records. This one wasn't standard. Barron's inclusion wasn't just unusual, it was strategic, the kind of name inserted to transfer holdings quietly, banking on the public's assumption that the youngest Trump was off limits. She sat on the document for days, debating what to do, discussing it with her chief of staff, Patrice Lattimore. "You bring that up on air," Patrice warned, "and they'll call you a monster. They'll say you're dragging a kid into politics." Jasmine stared at her screen. "He's 20 now. They used his name. That's not a child, that's a shield." So she took it to the studio, half expecting to stay silent. But when Victor started dismissing investigations as witch hunts, something snapped. Jasmine had worked too many cases, seen too many powerful people hide behind victim labels. She wasn't reckless. She didn't accuse Barron of wrongdoing. She simply dropped the truth on live TV and watched the room go silent. In the days that followed, news anchors dissected her wording frame by frame. "She never said he committed fraud," one anchor noted, but implied he was involved. Legal experts chimed in. A former IRS investigator told a podcast that using a family member's name in last-minute asset shielding wasn't illegal but could be a strategy to slow investigations or avoid transparency. Online, reactions were ferocious. Supporters praised Jasmine for speaking truth to power. Others accused her of going too far. "Barron has done nothing wrong," read a popular tweet. "He's a young man trying to stay private. Why drag him into the swamp?" Behind the noise, a quieter conversation brewed in Washington. Political insiders traded theories. Who gave Jasmine the file? Was it a leak to burn bridges with the Trump circle? Then someone found a detail everyone missed. An archived February 2021 press release from a Delaware financial firm confirmed a trust restructure dated 3 days after Barron's name appeared on the document. No names were public, but the timeline matched. Someone had moved money quickly and quietly. The pieces were forming a picture, even if the full canvas wasn't visible. At the center was Jasmine's question. If you're willing to use someone's name to protect wealth, are they really uninvolved? Barron hadn't seen the segment live. When he did, everything shifted personally. He was at a Sarasota cafe when his phone started vibrating nonstop. Late afternoon, Florida sun cutting through palm trees. Sitting across from childhood friend Drew Mallory, sipping iced coffee, flipping through a college course catalog, philosophy or computer science, maybe both. He'd kept a low profile for years. No Instagram, no podcast, no interviews, just quiet. Politics had taken enough from his family. He'd seen rallies, protests, headlines about his father, but none of it felt real. Not the cheering, not the hate, just noise. But today, the noise got personal. The first text came from a cousin in Nevada. You good? Turn on the news. Then missed calls from his mother, blocked numbers, texts. Dude, what did Crockett just say about you? Barron blinked. What the hell is going on? Drew looked up. Man, you might want to see this. He showed him a clip from Capitol View. Jasmine leaning forward, calm as stone, dropping his full name like a line in a script. Barron's breath caught. His hand tightened around the cup. He watched it again and again. Why would she say that? He asked. Drew stayed quiet. Barron looked down at the chipped wooden table. A hum inside his head, not anger, not fear, just tangled feelings like being exposed without being present. He stood abruptly. Let's get out of here. They left, pushing past laughing high school kids. Barron pulled his hoodie over his head, walking fast, not because anyone chased him, but because he didn't want to be still. He didn't want to feel the weight of imagined eyes. Back at the condo, Melania was pacing. She hadn't called again. She didn't need to. She just stared as he walked in. I told your father to stop using your name for those things, she said. No greeting, no hug. I told him years ago. Barron dropped his bag. So it's true. I don't know, she answered. Probably. He did a lot without telling me. Silence stretched. Did I sign something? He asked. No. Then how does my name end up in a trust document? Melania looked away. Because that's how they work. They use names like yours. Young, quiet, uninvolved, clean. He sank into a chair. That's not clean. That's messed up. She didn't argue, and that scared him more than anything. Later, he got a call from his father. He didn't answer, just stared at the phone until it went black. Not angry, exactly, but something cracked open, a quiet betrayal. The worst part, no one warned him. Not one word. The next morning, paparazzi were outside the gate. Not dozens, but enough to remind him what it felt like to be pulled back into the public eye. One shouted, Barron, is Crockett lying? Were you part of the trust? He turned and walked inside without a word. Behind closed doors at Mar-a-Lago, the mood was sharp and sour. Donald Trump paced slowly, forcing himself not to explode. A muted Fox Business segment showed the headline, Crockett names Barron Trump in trust allegation, White House ties. He turned to his longtime attorney, Seth Delaney, a gray-haired man used to cleaning up messes. She wasn't supposed to go there, Donald said. You hear me? They've got rules. You don't touch the family. You don't touch him. Seth nodded slowly, but his silence was telling. The media no longer followed old rules. Melania sat nearby, arms crossed, legs tucked under her like she was freezing. She hadn't spoken much since the night before. Ivanka was on speakerphone from Miami. Her voice cut sharp and cold. Dad, this is going to spiral. Networks are requesting archived documents. Donald huffed. Let them dig. There's nothing illegal, but there's something. That's enough for them, Ivanka said. This isn't 2016 anymore. You can't just wait it out. Melania finally spoke. He didn't know, Donald. Her husband stopped pacing. Who didn't? Barron? Donald blinked. What are you talking about? Of course he didn't know. That's the point. He's not a child anymore, she said quietly. He sees what's happening now, and he's angry. For a second, regret flickered across Trump's face, but it passed quickly. He turned back to Seth. Find out who gave Crockett that file. Someone leaked it. I want a name. I want a face. Seth nodded. We'll look into it. But you should also think about making a public statement. Trump scoffed. Absolutely not. You respond, you validate it. She's trying to bait me. I'm not giving her the satisfaction. In another wing, Barron sat staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he hadn't seen since boarding school. Didn't think I'd see you trending. You okay? He didn't answer, just swiped it away. A quiet knock. His father entered, slower than usual. Mind if I sit? Barron shrugged. Sure. Donald sat at the edge of a desk chair, spinning it like he used to when Barron was small. He looked at his son, now taller, face unreadable. I didn't think it would blow back like this, Trump said. Barron kept his eyes on the ceiling. Why use my name? You weren't involved. It was paperwork. A name helps make things stick, makes it look clean. You mean I make it look clean? There it was. Donald didn't argue or deflect. For once, he let silence stretch. I didn't want this, Barron said. I've spent my whole life trying to stay out of this mess. Trump nodded slowly. Sometimes you don't get to choose what gets attached to your name. I didn't attach anything, Barron said, looking at his father. You did. That landed harder than Donald expected. While the family scrambled for damage control, the outside world peeled back more than one layer. By Monday, Barron Trump's name had been mentioned on every major news channel at least once, not as a footnote, but front and center, woven into headlines, podcast intros, TikTok explainers, and political blogs with red arrows on screenshots. CNN ran a split screen showing Jasmine Crockett's live moment alongside a silent photo of Barron walking through an airport. MSNBC debated whether the mention was justified or reckless. Fox called it a targeted smear against an innocent young man. It didn't matter that the full facts weren't out yet. The internet rarely waits for confirmation. Clips of Crockett's statement racked up over 20 million views in 24 hours. Someone edited it into a dramatic montage with violin music. Another turned it into a meme. Jasmine at the table, Barron's face photoshopped onto an explosion. The internet doesn't do nuance. Hashtags took off. Hashtag Barron Trust, hashtag Crockett Files, hashtag Too Sacred to Question. Even poor Barron started trending, mostly defended, but speculation didn't stop. A Reddit thread claiming inside info from a former White House staffer racked up 15,000 comments, including grainy screenshots of alleged financial documents, most doctored. Truth didn't matter. The audience had made up its mind. Some believed Barron was a puppet in his father's scheme. Others thought it a deep state setup to damage Trump before the next election. Then came live streams. YouTubers and commentators hosted hours-long panels. The secret Trump trust. What we know, Barron speaks. One in Portland claimed leaked Deutsche Bank emails but produced no documents. Still, 200,000 watched. Even journalists who'd ignored Barron for years scoured public records for anything. Signatures, college applications, property listings. Privacy, once a given for the youngest Trump, was gone in less than 48 hours. Meanwhile, in Miami, Jasmine's team was overwhelmed. They hadn't expected this fallout. Hate mail flooded inboxes, but so did praise. Dozens of voters thanked her for saying what others were too scared to. One retired Oregon teacher wrote, "For the first time, someone said what we've all been thinking, that no name should be untouchable if it's protecting corruption." Jasmine's press secretary begged her to issue a clarifying statement to ease the heat, but she refused to backpedal. I didn't accuse anyone, she told her team. I exposed a detail. If it wasn't true, they'd sue me already. Despite media chaos, the Trump legal team hadn't sent cease and desist letters, just silence. To many, that silence was louder than words. But the internet wasn't just talking, it was digging. A well-known political blogger in Phoenix, who'd broken 2 campaign finance stories recently, posted a thread hinting he'd found something in Delaware's public records. He didn't say what, just cryptic posts, a timestamp, a trust registration number, a screenshot matching the file Crockett referenced. Suddenly, people weren't just reacting, they were investigating. But the next move wouldn't come from media, Crockett, or Trump. It came from someone no one expected, Barron himself. Miles from the storm, in a modest Phoenix apartment above a liquor store, Curtis Rojas sat hunched over 2 monitors. His place was cluttered, open legal pads, takeout containers, a rusted ceiling fan slicing the air. Curtis wasn't a traditional journalist, no degree, no desk, but he'd been right too many times to ignore. 2 years earlier, he'd exposed a secret PAC funneling foreign money into a midterm campaign. The story got buried, but those watching the money remembered. He hadn't planned to look into the Trump family again, but when Crockett said Barron's name on live TV, something clicked. He recalled seeing that name months ago in a digital record, a brief trust registration logged under Delaware's public access portal. Back then, it meant nothing. Now, it might mean everything. He pulled up the portal again, typing slowly. Trump Trust 2021. Nothing. Tried W. Trump. Still nothing. Then he remembered an accountant's advice. When people want to hide wealth, they don't use obvious names. They use initials, shelf firms, third-party custodians. So Curtis searched every trust registered between January 6th and 15th, 2021, in Delaware. 57 results. He scrolled slowly, matching addresses, cross-checking LLC managers. Then he found it, a trust registered under BW Legacy Holdings, filed January 12, 2021. Custodial designation, minor adult beneficiary. Mailing address, a P.O. box tied to a Palm Beach accounting firm. At the bottom of the scanned document, in faint black ink, was a signature Curtis recognized from a White House visitor's log. M. Yanovitz, Trump's longtime family tax lawyer. Curtis leaned back. He didn't jump to conclusions. He made copies, pulled linked documents, dug through public LLC records. The deeper he went, the clearer it became. This wasn't a one-time registration. It was part of a multi-step structure, shell companies in Wyoming and South Dakota, all pointing back to the same financial web. Baron William Trump's full name didn't appear again, but his initials did. BWT, listed under Deferred Beneficiary Designations. Curtis knew what that meant. It didn't mean Baron managed anything, but someone planned for him to benefit eventually. That made Crockett's comment more than speculation. Now came the hardest part, going public. He could post the files, but trolls would tear them apart or worse. They'd dig into him, call him a liar, spin it as a political hit job. He paced, heart-rattling. Finally, he posted one document with a simple caption. Why was this trust listing BWT as a beneficiary created 3 days before the end of the Trump presidency? And why has no one asked? The tweet caught fire. People pieced it together. BWT, January 12th, Trump tax lawyer, Palm Beach. It was enough to reignite the conversation. Curtis got a DM within 20 minutes from a freelance reporter in Jacksonville. Are you sure that's who you think it is? He replied, yes, but I'm not the one who needs to explain it. Back in Sarasota, Barron saw the tweet while scrolling in bed. He read it 3 times. No denials from family, no lawyer explanations, just silence. He stared at the screen. For once, questions weren't about him. They were around him. Pressure to answer closed in fast. Instead of staying silent, Barron made a decision that would flip the narrative again. He hadn't posted publicly in years, not since a forgotten SoundCloud account in high school, and even then it was just music, no voice, no face. He preferred the background. That was the unspoken agreement. Stay low, don't react, and the world would forget you existed. But this wasn't just noise anymore. His name was everywhere, chopped into memes, dissected by analysts, shouted across networks. The trust, the initials, the signatures, even his middle name had become ammunition. He wasn't built for this. Not like his father, not like Ivanka trained herself to be. He wasn't a strategist. He was just a kid dragged into a world he'd avoided. Late Tuesday night, in a group chat with trusted friends, Barron finally said, I think I want to say something. One friend replied, like public. Another, bro, careful. That'll just make it worse. But silence felt worse. It felt like drowning. He opened his notes app, started typing, deleted, tried again. Nothing sounded right, defensive, or stiff. He couldn't shake the pressure building in his chest. The longer he waited, the more his silence was interpreted for him. So instead of a statement, he reached out privately to someone who'd always treated him like a person, not a name, Leah Quinton. She'd sat next to him for 2 semesters at Columbia Prep. Now she ran a modest independent YouTube news channel, social commentary and mental health discussions, nothing flashy. He messaged her late that night, not sure you'll want to touch this, but I'd rather speak to someone real than be chewed up by CNN. She replied within minutes, you sure? Yeah. The next afternoon, Leah flew to Sarasota. They didn't film or mic up. She brought a handheld recorder, no lights, no makeup team, just 2 chairs in a quiet room with blinds half closed. Barron didn't want the world to see his face, but he wanted them to hear his voice. The recording ran just under 15 minutes. Most of it was slow, unsure, measured. Barron never denied the trust existed, but didn't pretend to understand it fully. I never signed anything. I didn't even know about it until last week. If someone wants to hand me something in a vault when I'm 30, fine. But don't use my name like I signed up for all this. I didn't. When Leah asked how he felt watching it all unfold, his voice cracked slightly. It's weird seeing people talk about you like you're either a victim or a villain. I'm not either. I'm just trying to be normal. She didn't press. The pauses said as much as the answers. Barron ended with a quiet, almost embarrassed reflection. I think people need to stop pretending silence from someone young means they're fine with what's going on. Sometimes we're just tired of being spoken for. Leah posted a snippet that evening, audio only. The internet exploded. Some called it a PR stunt. Others praised him for being more transparent than anyone else in his family. Hashtags flipped overnight. Hashtag let Barron speak trended for hours. Something shifted, not because of what he revealed, but because of how raw it sounded. Honest, unscripted, human. The political world didn't know what to do with that. While Barron's words sparked empathy, Jasmine Crocket faced her own internal battle. Pressure mounted fast. Jasmine stood by the tinted window in her D.C. office, watching the sky bruise over Capitol Hill. Her phone buzzed for the 6th time in 5 minutes, but she didn't turn. She already knew what the messages were about. Since Barron's interview with Leah hit the internet, things had shifted, not against her necessarily, but not in her favor either. The press reframed the story, less about the trust, more about the ethics of naming someone like Barron on live TV. Headlines read, Crockett's statement sparks sympathy for Trump's son. Was it a step too far? Barron speaks, nation listens. Should Crockett respond? Inside her office, phones rang constantly, emails poured in, some praising, others attacking. Her chief of staff, Patrice Lattimore, paced behind her, clutching a tablet with talking points for a press briefing they'd been dodging. You don't have to apologize, Patrice said quietly, but you do have to say something. You're letting everyone else steer this. Jasmine didn't answer. She was tired, not from guilt, because deep down she didn't regret saying it. She regretted how it came out, maybe, but not the substance. She turned from the window. They're shifting focus, making it about tone, not truth. I know, Patrice said, but tone gets people listening. Truth just keeps them arguing. Jasmine rubbed her temples. Do you think I went too far? Patrice didn't lie. I think you went farther than people were ready for. That night, Jasmine recorded a short video from home. No podium, no flag, just her in a plain sweatshirt at a kitchen table. She didn't walk anything back, but her voice was softer, measured, less courtroom, more conversation. To the people who felt I crossed the line, I hear you. I understand the reaction. I also believe we can talk about systems of power without pretending certain names are immune. My job isn't to protect feelings, it's to protect fairness. She paused, then with quiet firmness. If a name was used, it should be questioned, even if that name belongs to someone who didn't ask to be involved. That's not an attack, it's accountability. The video went viral within the hour. People split quickly. Some thanked her for staying strong. Others said she missed the moment to show grace. But one thing was clear, she wasn't going away quietly. Meanwhile, her office received a package with no return address. Inside was a thin manila envelope with printed documents, 3 pages listing dates, trust transactions, and one specific notation, custodial override filed under adult minor clause. Few outside the legal world understood the term, but to Jasmine it was a red flag. Someone was still leaking and daring her to keep going. Patrice frowned. You think this is bait? Jasmine shook her head. No. It's a door, and someone's daring me to walk through it. She tucked the envelope into her briefcase and locked it. Later, she rewatched Barron's interview with Leah, especially where he said, I didn't sign up for any of this. For the first time, Jasmine didn't see a last name. She saw a kid with a father making decisions in boardrooms without explaining them. It complicated things. But the person it hit hardest wasn't Jasmine. It was someone still trying to make sense of everything at home. Barron sat at the edge of the pool behind the Sarasota condo, knees pulled to his chest, earbuds in but no music playing. The water reflected moonlight in broken strips, like the surface was trying to speak a language only he could understand. He hadn't gone online all day. The silence felt cleaner. His mother sat a few feet away, wrapped in a light shawl, holding a mug of cold tea. Neither spoke for a long time. Melania finally broke the silence. I watched the interview. He glanced over. Yeah, you sounded like yourself. Barron gave a tired smile. That's good. I wasn't trying to sound like anyone else. She hesitated. Do you want to know what your father said about it? He shrugged. Not really. Melania sipped tea. He said you were careful, that you didn't give them anything to twist. He was relieved. Barron nodded, still looking at the water. I think he was also a little scared, she added. He looked at her, brow raised. Of what? Me saying more? No. Of you saying exactly enough. He didn't respond, but something about that line lingered. The TV was still playing. CNN ran a segment on political families and privacy lines. The host asked, should children of public figures be held accountable for financial decisions made in their name? Barron stood and shut it off. Later that night, his father arrived unannounced. Melania let him in without a word. He walked slowly, wearing his usual navy blazer, no tie. He looked more tired than usual, like the weight of the last week had sunk into his bones. Can we talk? He asked. Barron sat on the couch. His father didn't take the seat across but stood, hands in pockets. I know this isn't how you wanted to be seen, Trump said, and I never wanted this either. Not for you. Then why use my name? No accusation, just weariness and honesty. Trump looked away. Because I thought it was harmless. I didn't think it would matter. It was protective. Protective for you, Barron said. Not for me. His father looked like he wanted to say something sharp, but didn't. Instead, he walked to the window and stood in silence. I'm not mad that people know, Barron said after a moment. I'm mad that I didn't. Donald turned. You think I didn't want to tell you? Barron shook his head. I think you didn't think you had to. His father let out a short breath, part frustration, part acceptance. I didn't see the harm. Well, now you do. Silence again. Then Barron said something heavier than expected. I don't want to be part of the brand. Trump looked confused. What brand? You know what I mean. The words sat between them like a challenge. Donald didn't respond immediately. He nodded slowly, then walked toward the door. Before leaving, he paused. You did good with that interview. You were calm, direct. I wasn't performing, Barron said. I was just trying to sound like me. Trump held his gaze a beat longer, then left without another word. That night, Barron opened his laptop and started writing, not a statement, not a post, just scattered, honest, unfinished thoughts about identity, inheritance, silence. He didn't know what he'd do with it yet, but it felt better than saying nothing. While father and son reached their quiet standoff, the country was still asking the bigger question, where does responsibility end when legacy begins? By week's end, the conversation had moved past headlines. People weren't just asking what Jasmine said or why Barron responded. They were asking why it took so long for anyone to notice what had been hiding in plain sight. In living rooms, college campuses, talk radio, diners in Wisconsin, folks had real conversations not about politics, but about the lines between family and power, privacy, and accountability. It wasn't about liking or hating the Trumps. It was about what happens when your name carries a legacy you never chose and silence is mistaken for consent. One high school civics teacher spoke and turned the scandal into a classroom debate. The prompt, does being connected to power mean you owe the public more transparency? Responses varied, but none shrugged. That was the shift. Even in Washington, the tone changed. Lawmakers, red and blue, grew more cautious, aware people were paying attention in new ways. Jasmine went quiet for days, turning down interviews and refusing to escalate the story. She knew she'd said enough. The conversation had momentum. Barron stayed out of the public eye. No new statements, no follow-ups. Friends said he seemed lighter, not happy, but clear. For once, people saw him as a person, not just a headline. He kept writing. Somewhere in his notes was a line circled twice. Just because I didn't speak up before doesn't mean I was okay with it. That line said more than any press release. In a country where politics moves like a storm, loud, fast, often senseless, this story lingered, not because of scandal, but because of the questions it forced. Should children of the powerful be protected or accountable? Is silence protection or complicity? Who draws that line? People didn't agree. They weren't supposed to, but they were finally asking. And that might be the most honest place to start. Because at the end of the day, every name carries something. Some carry legacy, some shame, some nothing at all, but still get dragged along. When you're born into power, even your silence speaks. In Barron Trump's case, for once, he chose what that silence meant. If this story made you think, share it. If it made you question something you've taken for granted, talk about it. And if you believe power, no matter the name, deserves transparency, don't look away when it's uncomfortable. Subscribe for more stories that ask the hard questions.